Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our coverage of the qualifying session here for the main race at the Chinese Grand Prix. If you're looking for our coverage of all things sprint, those videos are on the channel. The coverage of the sprint shootout yesterday and the main sprint race from this morning. But now it's time to talk about the race. Like and subscribe, of course. I say it's time to talk about the race. Firstly, it's time to talk about qualifying. But we also do need to talk about the sprint race because a very strange decision has been handed out from the stewards. Now, there was the incident between Alonso and Sainz towards the end of the sprint race, which resulted in Alonso getting a puncture, but it turns out it's also resulted in him getting a penalty. The stewards have given Alonso a 10-second time penalty for the sprint race for causing a collision. A 10-second time penalty for a race that he didn't finish. So, I don't really know what the point of that is, but they have also given him 3 penalty points. I don't know whether if they want to give him a penalty. Firstly, I think that incident was a racing incident. I haven't watched it back since this morning, but from just remembering it, I felt it was a racing incident and was not really anyone's to blame. Maybe if I watch it again, I might change my mind. But as we sit here right now, I think it's just a racing incident. But also, if you're going to give a penalty for that incident, why are you giving him a 10-second time penalty for a race he didn't finish, instead of a grid place penalty for the race tomorrow, where it's actually relevant? I don't understand that. But there you go. So, heading into qualifying now for the main race, and with this new schedule change for the sprint race weekends, it means we have a second Parc Fermé, which means that the drivers and the teams are able to change their setups from what they had for the sprint race and sprint qualifying. So if they think they got in the wrong direction, they can change it and try and correct it for the main race. But also, they could change it and it gets worse. I wonder who that will happen to, Lewis Hamilton. Anyway, into Q1 then, and a few things to notice from the top is Yuki Tsunoda is still very much struggling, but this wasn't helped by the fact that he had a DRS issue. His DRS wasn't opening. This was fixed eventually, but still not great times from Yuki Tsunoda. Alex Albon impedes Perez quite badly. I think it was noted by the stewards. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he got a penalty for that, because it did seem pretty bad. Towards the end of the session, we have a few big names who are circling around the drop zone. The likes of Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez were all at risk of going out in Q1. But as the session ends, here is our bottom 5. So Logan Sargent is 20th again, and that is exactly the same as he was in the sprint race. Yuki Tsunoda in 19th, and that's also the same as the sprint race as well. So the back row, exactly the same for the sprint and main race this weekend. Yuki Tsunoda really struggling this weekend. This is the first race of the year, proper race, that he's been beaten by Daniel Ricciardo in qualifying, but he has been beaten by Ricciardo in qualifying in both the sprint and the main races today. Not sure what's going on with Yuki, but he does not seem too pleased. Then, the big shock in 18th place is Lewis Hamilton. He says that he's taken a setup change from the sprint to qualifying, and it really has not worked out well for him at all. 18th place for Lewis Hamilton. 24 hours ago, he qualified on the front row for the sprint race. 4 hours ago, he finished second in the sprint race, and here he is now, qualifying 18th. Really quite a shocker here from Hamilton. We know that the Mercedes wasn't necessarily great in the dry in qualifying yesterday, but it was nowhere near this bad of 18th place. And if this setup has really, really ruined this car, it's going to be very difficult for him to do a recovery drive tomorrow. So that is definitely one to watch, the story of Lewis Hamilton in the race tomorrow. 17th is Magnussen, and in 16th is Zhou Guanyu. Unfortunate for Zhou to go out in Q1 in his home race. He was just 0.048 behind 15th place, which was Sergio Perez. So very close for Perez getting through in Q1 after his first lap time was impeded by Albon. In Q2, the huge story is Carlos Sainz, who has a massive spin coming out of the final corner. The rear right tyre touches the gravel and he spins into a massive cloud of smoke, goes all the way across the track, hits the barrier on the other side. This brings out a red flag. I thought he was out of the session at this point, but he manages to get the car going again, drives it back to the pits. They changed the front wing on it, and apparently it's okay, because he carried on regardless throughout the session. In Q2, the guys out were Gasly in 15th, Albon 14th, Ocon 13th, Ricciardo 12th, and then it was Lance Stroll in 11th. Yet again, cut-off points is very close. Stroll being knocked out by 0.069. Let's talk about the Alpines a little bit here, because Alpine have had an awful year thus far, but Ocon has got a new chassis this weekend and seems to be doing a little bit better. Still not where we'd expect Alpine to be, but is definitely improving, and he did quite well in the sprint race as well. So Ocon, one to watch as well tomorrow to see how that new Alpine chassis is holding up. Now, we'll go into Q3, and this was the top 10 when everyone set their first lap times. Not the end of the session, but their first lap times. It was Bottas in 10th, who hadn't set a lap time. He was saving his tyres. He'd only do one lap in Q3. Russell in 9th was on old softs. Hülkenberg in 8th was also on old softs. Then it was Leclerc 7th, Sainz 6th, Piastri 5th, Norris 4th, Perez 3rd, 2nd for Alonso, and Max Verstappen in a provisional pole position. And then as we complete the session properly, we have Bottas in 10th. Still a very good performance from Valtteri Bottas to get that car into 10th. It seems like that Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber car is getting better. Of course, the main red flag of that team is its pit stops and their issues with the wheel nuts. So that's something to look out for tomorrow, because it seemed like they got better in Japan. Can they consistently be there or thereabouts, even though I think their better pit stops were still about 2 seconds too slow, but they weren't 40 seconds too slow. So that's one to watch for tomorrow, but they seem to be going in a good direction as of right now. Hülkenberg was in 9th, very good from him. Russell 8th, so 10 places in front of his teammate there. Sainz 7th, Leclerc in 6th. Really quite surprising for the Ferraris to be this low down, if I'm honest. I expected them to be quite a bit higher. I think they did do some setup changes between the sprint and the race, and I don't know, maybe their race pace will be better, but the qualifying pace wasn't necessarily what I expect them to be this morning. And it was Piastri in 5th, Norris in 4th, so both McLarens ahead of both Ferraris. Alonso is in 3rd place, then it was Perez 2nd, and Verstappen taking pole position, the 100th pole position for the Red Bull Racing team, and his 5th, oh god, I'm getting choked up, I'm getting so emotional. It's his 5th pole in a row from the start of the year, and I think his 6th pole in a row in general. So Max Verstappen, who's never really been a guy who's been great at qualifying. Like, whenever I've discussed Max Verstappen before and his strengths and weaknesses, I've always put qualifying as one of his weaknesses, but really has turned it around to be quite the good qualifier as of late. So doing very well there is Max Verstappen. But yeah, here's our top 10, and it's setting up for quite an interesting race. I'm looking forward to seeing what Alonso could do. We saw in the sprint race, the Alonso train appeared, full of just guys who couldn't get past him because that Aston straight line speed is so good. So will that happen again? Piastri massively fell off in the sprint race, but I think he's had a setup change as well, so maybe he can get on top of that as well. The Ferraris are out of position. Of course, the biggest guy out of position is Lewis Hamilton, one to keep an eye on there. But yeah, we have got a setup for what should be quite a fun race, and I will look forward to it. Right now, I'm going to go to bed, but I'll be back here tomorrow to discuss all things Chinese Grand Prix. I hope to see you there as well. Make sure to subscribe and like and all of that wonderful stuff. Until then, though, I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Goodbye.